Phillipsburg Town Council meeting, November 1st, 2022. Second reading of Ordinance 2022-30, with all public comments included. Ordinance 2022-30 is the ordinance that allows a warehouse to be built in downtown Phillipsburg along the Delaware River.
Okay, Ordinance 2022-30, I'm going to recuse myself and I'm going to refer to Council Vice President to move forward with this
ordinance. Ordinance 2022-30, an ordinance of the Town of Phillipsburg, County of Warren, New Jersey, adopting the District 5 Riverside Industrial Amendments Riverfront Redevelopment Plan. Open to motion.
I'd like the motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call?
No.
Oh, open to public. I can tell it's the first time.
Yep.
Second time.
The floor is now open to the public. Public comment. Council President.
3 minutes speaking time.
Elizabeth Ridley, 198 Summit Avenue. I'm here to speak against 2022-30. We, the group, Phillipsburg Environmental Watch, a grassroots organization under the umbrella of the New Jersey Highlands Coalition, made up entirely of Phillipsburg residents, are asking you to refrain from moving grown Howard Street legislation forward at this time. In addition to being Phillipsburg residents, we have representation within our group from the flats of Phillipsburg, the location where the proposed Barone Howard Street warehouse will be located. Mr. Marucci's original 2006 plan for townhouses on the Howard Street site was named Riverview at Delaware Station. The focus was clearly to market homes as being on the Delaware River. Indeed, Mr. Marucci had hopes to eventually construct more than 1,000 homes along the river, and also to enable a riverfront walkway connecting the development through the park into Union Square. In 2006, the Howard Street Townhouse project's key marketing component would be its proximity to the view of the Delaware River. In 2022, Rose's Fourth Warehouse plan seeks to present the same site as somehow now not being close to the river. It appears, depending on what Mr. Marucci wants to sell at various points in time, anything can be made subjective. Anyone who votes for this ordinance should, along with the developer, be willing to live in the flats with their families, to suffer the same health, safety, and quality of life risks which the adults, and especially the children of the flats, will face as a result of this proposed warehouse. We need our leaders to understand the corrosive effect of putting the needs of one developer before the well-being of the people of Phillipsburg. We need our elected council members to have faith in the process of the legal system. Please wait for the decision from the lawsuit to be delivered before you take any action on moving ordinance 2022-30 forward. Now we will discuss the following topics for council: the lawsuit and how any decisions you make tonight will affect the future of Phillipsburg. And referring to the September 7, 2022 New Jersey warehouse siting guidelines, we will discuss reasons why the warehouse in the flats of Phillipsburg is a bad idea for the residents of the town.
David Morissette, 5 Fairview Heights, Phillipsburg, New Jersey. I'm going to provide some information so you have a complete and clear understanding of the lawsuit and the impact of your vote tonight. In June of 2021, we filed a suit against the town of Phillipsburg because we believe multiple council members had a conflict of interest when voting on Ordinance 2021-14. Ordinance 2021-14 passed in May of 2021. This is the ordinance that originally made the Barone Howard Street property industrial and cleared the way for a 510,000 square foot warehouse. Since that point in time, the town has approved a 400,000 square foot warehouse, partly due to the fact that the state would not allow the town of Phillipsburg to sell Delaware River Park to Barone Corporation for their 510,000 square foot warehouse. If we are successful in our suit, Ordinance 2021-14 will be vacated and the property will return to residential. Once the property is rezoned to residential, a warehouse can't be built on the Perone Howard Street property. Now a new factor has been put into the equation, and that is Ordinance 2022-30. If you pass the second reading of Ordinance 2022-30, prior to a decision coming back from the court regarding Ordinance 2021-14, you will kill the lawsuit against Ordinance 2021-14. Ordinance 2022-30 will replace Ordinance 2021-14, and the lawsuit against 2021-14 will become moot or irrelevant. If Ordinance 2022-30 passes, you will have given Perone Corporation the right to build a warehouse on the Perone Howard Street property, regardless of the lawsuit against 2021-14. Ordinance 2022-30 is functionally exactly the same ordinance as 2021-14, except it has a different size warehouse and discusses a rail connection. If you refrain from moving the Perone Howard Street warehouse legislation, Ordinance 2022-30, forward, or in other words, you do not vote yes for the Ordinance 2022-30, and you wait for the court decision to be returned from the court, you will then have a choice of voting for or against a warehouse on the Perone Howard Street property. If you refrain from moving Ordinance 2022-30 forward, you will have a chance to stop the sprawl of warehouses and keep these proposed warehouses, or this warehouse, from blocking the view of the Delaware River. If my talk is not perfectly clear, please ask me questions. Otherwise, I'll assume you know exactly what you're voting for. No questions? Okay.
Sorry. Sandra Morissette, 5 Fairview Heights. Perone Howard Street warehouse is a terrible idea, as its construction violates numerous areas of New Jersey's September 7, 2022 warehouse siting guidelines. There are 4 major areas where the warehouse violates these guidelines. First, the warehouse siting guideline states do not put warehouses in residential areas. Yet Perone Construction proposes to build their warehouse in the flats, a predominantly residential area. While there is a small area of light industrial between the area of the warehouse and the residential area, the proposed 6.5-story, 360,000 square foot warehouse will be built in this largely residential area. Initially, 80 trucks are estimated to use the warehouse. If you think of each truck entering and exiting the warehouse, then a truck will travel McKean Street 160 times. Between residents on Center Street, Phillipsburg, and residents on New Brunswick Avenue, Powhatcom, they will see a combined total of 160 tractor trailers pass their houses every day as the 80 proposed trucks enter and exit the warehouse. I mentioned Center Street in Phillipsburg and New Brunswick Avenue in Powhatcom as Town Council submitted a plan to the New Jersey Department of Transportation to eliminate truck traffic from South Main Street in downtown Phillipsburg. We understand the reasoning to divert truck traffic from South Main Street. The plan shifts the harm of the truck traffic from South Main Street to the residential roads of Center Street and New Brunswick Avenue. That truck cements this warehouse as a horrendously bad idea, with 160 tractor trailers traveling through those residential neighborhoods, and will place additional harm to them both in Center Street and New Brunswick Avenue. If the rail gets completed, then 20 trucks are proposed, which still means 40 trucks in and out, and still the additional burden of residents seeing 40 tractor trailers pass their houses. With Center Street, you are placing additional harm of truck traffic from the warehouse to residents who are your constituents. We understand Cohacton residents on New Brunswick Avenue have no influence on Town Council with their vote. However, we still feel it is morally wrong to place additional harm of the warehouse tractor trailers on our neighbours for a warehouse that is wrong for so many other reasons.
I'm Joshua Nisko, 185 Lewis Street. There's a concept in the social sciences called a polite fiction. What it basically means is a lie that everyone understands is a lie, but no one is willing to acknowledge, so we all just go on pretending to believe it so we can get along. Right now, in this room, we all understand the fiction of the warehouse. The promised benefits are not real and never were. They are a lie in the service of a developer who made a bad investment 15 years ago and now wants the town to rescue him from the consequences of his own poor decision. The division here isn't between people who believe the lie and those who don't, but between those who pretend to believe the lie and those who don't. The benefits of the warehouse are a fiction, but the costs are very real. Here are some more of them. The siting guidelines state that warehouses are not to be placed near a protected natural resource. The history of the Delaware goes back to the history of the United States, since the very beginning. It's an absolutely priceless natural resource. The location for the warehouse is on the river. The developer himself has been acknowledging the location as a waterfront site for decades until he realized that doing so was no longer in his best interest. However, the language he now chooses to employ does not change the underlying truth of the nature of the location. Additionally, the warehouse siting guidelines state you should not place a warehouse next to an active park. The proposed warehouse will partially encircle the Delaware River Park, an active location which serves a community that would otherwise have no access to green space. On top of that, the guidelines also state a warehouse should not be placed in a location without direct access to highways and major arteries. A warehouse that's buried in the back of the flats, nowhere near any highways or major arteries, clearly violates these guidelines. The bypass routes will have the trucks traveling extensively on residential roads. Currently, the best bypass road is New Brunswick Ave, a roadway similar in size to South Main Street. The lack of direct access makes this location a catastrophically bad location to site a warehouse. But we knew that. The proponents of the warehouse will parade the same figures from a bygone era of Phillipsburg history to repeat the same unbelievable claims they've made many times before. But everyone who's been listening now knows better by this point. Any claimed benefits of this warehouse are a phantom, a fiction, a trick, a lie. But the costs are very real and will be paid by those who can least afford them. I'm not exaggerating when I say the outcome of this vote will decide the future of our town. You can stop this. You can vote no. You can wait. It doesn't need to be a choice between bad and worse. You can seize our own destiny instead of being active collaborators with those who would exploit us. There's a right choice here, and everyone knows what it is. I'm asking you today to have the courage to make it.
Joshua Nisko, 185 Lewis Street. Knowing what you don't want is different than knowing what you do want. Many opponents of the warehouse know what they don't want. They don't want trucks in town. They don't want the noise, the traffic, or the safety risks associated with the trucks. I'm here to tell you what I do want for the Howard Street property and for the people of Phillipsburg. The Perone property along Howard Street is a young but maturing forest habitat. Closer to the railroad, there are massive sycamore trees and other mature trees along the rail beds. I want forests. I want forests and green space in and near my town, including the Howard Street property that is adjacent to the existing Delaware River Park. I want forests that filter pollutants from runoff stormwater, forests that prevent flooding, capture carbon to mitigate the effects of climate change, and provide habitat for a surprising variety of wildlife species. During the lockdown in the spring of 2020, I was drowning in sorrow and uncertainty like many of us were. I decided on April 15th that I would drive down to Delaware River Park each day to bird and record which species I saw there, including waterfowl on the river, species flying high above the park, and those actually in the park and on the neighboring Perone property. I identified 63 species of birds in 3 weeks' time. I want places where wildlife can thrive, and I want others like myself to have access to places to connect with and enjoy nature, despite the occasional ATV or gunshots in the distance. I want more time to enjoy Delaware River Park in its current state, as part of a sizable green space in our highly developed town. More time for thoughtful planning that is proactive and not reactive to vague posturing about an even bigger warehouse or building low-income housing in town. Mr. Carucci can redevelop urban sites and brownfields to his heart's content, but I do not want him to ruin Delaware River Park. The people of Phillipsburg don't need his project, and Mr. Carucci, with multiple development projects throughout the valley, doesn't really need this project either. I want a town council that demonstrates an environmental ethic and a real commitment to the quality of life for current and future residents of Phillipsburg. Members of council, we cannot buy the Howard Street property tonight, but we can buy time. We can buy time to consider other visions for this property that will better serve the people of Phillipsburg. You can buy another spring migration. You can buy another kid a year of ATV in the back gravel paths down along Howard Street. You can buy the people of this town a little more time to enjoy Delaware River Park without a 6-acre, 65-foot high warehouse looming over their park. Please vote no. Thank you.
Hi, it's Stuart Ridley, 198 Summit Avenue in Phillipsburg. The redeveloper is providing a twisted justification for putting a warehouse in the flats. Michael Perucci has suggested this because of an open gun range and a junkyard in the flats. Nobody would buy a house there because it is an undesirable place to live. So his idea is to put a warehouse there, further degrading the residents' quality of life, both in the flats and in other residential areas of town that will be harmed by the increased truck traffic. Now, council has also received a bunch of threats from the developer to make you think that the town will be doomed and something worse than a warehouse will go on the Perone Howard Street property if you don't immediately approve Ordinance 2022-30. One of their threats is that the cold storage project is going to disappear if you wait for the decision from the court. The cold storage project is not going to disappear if they have to wait until the lawsuit decision comes back. He's trying to suggest that if you don't act right now, the world is going to come crashing down and they will build a 400,000 foot warehouse with a lot more truck traffic. Don't fall for what is at best a cheap car salesman's trick and at worst an attempt at veiled extortion. Michael Perucci and his company are also saying that if they are not able to build the 65-foot, 360,000 square foot warehouse, then they will build low-income housing. Again, a veiled extortion attempt. Remember, before low-income housing can be built in Phillipsburg, it would have to come through and be approved by this council. Please do not move the warehouse legislation. The various threats are signs that Michael Perucci and his supporters recognise that it is likely the town will lose the lawsuit. If the town loses the lawsuit, the property will be rezoned back to residential and they can't build a warehouse on the Perone Howard Street property. This is why Michael Perucci and his supporters are suggesting that this legislation be passed right away, and you can't wait for the decision from the lawsuit. His tactics are a symptom of a panicked developer. Also remember that if you approve a warehouse on the riverfront in downtown Phillipsburg, you are opening a Pandora's box. Another warehouse developer can come into town, buy up some property, and then request to rezone the property from residential to industrial. Because a precedent would have been set, you will be opening the town up to lawsuits. And it is very possible that other warehouses will be built in downtown Phillipsburg. Where would this end? With warehouses all over our town? On my street? On your street? Please say no to this ordinance. Thank you.
Nicole Timmerman, 112 North Riverview Road. I just sat here and listened to all of that, and I would just like, I don't know, just a little opinion on a couple of things. So this is gonna be Howard Street, correct?
Yes.
Are there any houses on Howard Street?
No.
No. So, I don't know, I just listened to a bunch of people who don't live on the flats talk about the quality of life on the flats. When was the last time, I don't know, I go down there with my kids and try to walk around, and I have people asking me for money and asking me for drugs and asking me for all kinds of things. So maybe that's the quality of life for everybody down on the flats that maybe we should be talking about, not about a warehouse that you're gonna put on Howard Street that doesn't have any houses, that already is an industrial area. That was the problem when he stood up here and asked you guys, can I build houses there? Nobody wanted the added school tax. Nobody wanted the extra students. Nobody wanted the extra parking. Nobody wanted any of those things. And now he's come to everybody with something else that's gonna give the town something. It's gonna bring people in. It's gonna offer jobs. He wants to partner with Norwest Hub and make Phillipsburg better. And once again, we're still here arguing because we don't want change. But just stop. This is absolutely mind-boggling, aggravatingly ridiculous. I grew up in this town my entire life. My entire life. I went to elementary school here. I went to high school here. I bought a house here. I'm raising my kids here. I want to see something better. Everybody has an argument about, oh, well, we don't want that for this reason, or we don't want that for this. Just stop. Let's move forward. Quit dragging our feet. I mean, it's already an industrial area. You screwed up and you brought green acres on a brown field. Let's do something with it. Seriously. It's not a park, it's a junkyard. The kids can't play on it, they can't play football, they can't play baseball, they can't play soccer, you can't do anything down there but pay the town to mow the grass. That's all.
Jim Daly, 326 Center Street. Just to give you a couple of numbers, he said 160 trips a day. On a 200-day working year, that's 35,000 trips. 35,000 trips, that would be 17,500 trucks coming up Center Street through the town of Peabody. That's absolutely ridiculous. I lived there, I bought a house there, and you're forcing me out. I'd like to stay there the rest of my life, but I'm not gonna, we don't sleep now with trucks coming up. We had a truck with a car on the back, 4 hours sit in front of our house, idle. Nobody came by to stop them, nobody come by to check on them. I used by a stop sign, let me tell you something, I've got the ticket. Okay? All I'm asking is, please don't send this traffic up through Peabody again. That is, think about it, that's 17,500 trucks going up and down Center Street, which is like this, as you know. I mean, we had fun in the wintertime. We watched the cars go up, try to get down. That's cars. Now imagine it being trucks. I'm not against a warehouse down on Howard Street, but send them out to the highway. Don't send them up through the town of Peabody. That's absolutely ridiculous. Who's going to pay for the new road every 10 years? I'll get to pay for that too, right? I mean, it's going to be like a washboard. You know how trucks stop and make the road like a washboard? It's going to happen every time on Center Street. I mean, how are they going to stop? They're going to have to slam on their brakes. This is the only way to stop going down that hill. I cannot understand for the life of me why you would send the traffic up through the town. And that's the only reason that if you have to send the traffic through the town, I'm not for a warehouse. Find a different way. Thank you.
Randy Piazza, Senior, 309 Mercer Street, here in Phillipsburg, down on the flats. What I was hearing here so far was a lot of people coming up here and talking about how this was going to look according to the layouts, the height requirements, where the trucks are going to go. The planning board hasn't even seen any site plans yet, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right? No site plans?
Not for the cold storage.
Okay, but I think that a lot of people are just jumping the gun here a little bit. They're trying to visualize what this place may look like. I visualize that it's going to be a state-of-the-art cold storage facility. Today, with cold storage facilities, it's actually becoming a need. You see what the events that are going on over in Europe right now, you see what's going on over in Asia. We've been having shortages here in the country. We've had food shortages, housing shortages. Cold storage facilities are going to help that out. We need them. And years ago, Phillipsburg, and I'm not talking about the historical structures or anything like that, but the history of the town, the people. When we were in wartime and peacetime, the people of Phillipsburg had industry here where they actually play a role in helping not only our national economy, but also the global economy. We supply. There's that sign down there in Trenton that says, Trenton makes, the world takes. Well, that's the way Phillipsburg was always. And to me, Phillipsburg now today has an opportunity to meet that challenge again. I don't think that having a cold storage facility is really that big a bad idea. I want to see it back there. I want to see activity. I want to see a structure back there. I want to see people back there. I want to see a building back there 24/7. People are talking about open space and forestation. Offer the gentleman the money for the property and buy it. Buy it. People are all coming up here and making suggestions and telling this guy what he should be doing with his own property. That really disgusts me. So, just in closing, I'd just like to say that, good luck, Mike. Let's not applaud, come on.
Good, how are you?
I'm Joe Miner, I live at 392 South Main Street, Phillipsburg. Okay, the stuff you've heard, 1,000 units by Mike Carucci. Well, it was 400 units, and it was a different time. It was not. It cost us taxes. It overloaded the parking, and it had additional congestion. That's why it was no good. But his present problem is the lawsuit, settled or not settled, it'll go back to industrial, not residential. The area is commercial, as wanted for industrial for jobs. What does that word say? I don't know. You heard of one time, one guy said 135, another said 80 trucks. Well, it's going to be 20 trucks. Just correcting a few of the little thises and that. The railhead will be consistent with the feature of Phillipsburg being a railroad town. The rail barn already there, I looked at it, can be utilized into a small railroad museum. It's quite large next to Delaware River Park. Visible from the sightseeing train coming up in the fall from Regalsville that the grant is going to allow us to get. We've got available via sightseeing train. Okay. Generally, those who claim lies are generally liars. I am not something or other. I am not twisted. I like living in Phillipsburg. Action is required now because I will be. I would like to have. I actually would like low-cost housing, but nobody's going to do that for me. The people of Phillipsburg are a lot more important than the few people who are worried about how pretty it's going to be. I want those jobs that this thing is placed. I want the ride and parking from Regalsville, both of which we get. The last area commissioner, another one, said anyone can use Delaware River Park. I heard other words from people here, but the commissioner told me, anybody wants to go use that park, you can go play baseball on those fields. How much time do I have? We're going to yield your time. That's be racist.
Howdy, my name is David Stone. I live at 874 Purcell Street, over on Purcell Hill. The gentleman before me is talking about some of the numbers in that. I guess there's conflict. So am I able to ask questions? How come to these? Like how many trucks is it estimated? No, I know they're not gonna. Is it 80 or is it 20 trucks?
So
Expected.
what was presented before the council was approximately 80 truck trips a day. If they didn't have the rail connection, if the rail connection was there, it would be dropped down to 15 to 20 trips a day, all of which was a reduction from the, Rob, what was the current approved truck traffic count on the,
I believe it's 125.
125. So either way you look at it, this use generates less truck traffic.
Okay, and is the truck traffic one way or two? Is a truck trip one direction or both directions?
How do you, well...
I don't have the report committee to remember. I knew it was the cold storage use was projected at 80 trips, total trips per day, which I believe is a split of 40 hours.
Okay. Okay, so, I mean, in any case, good. And then so 8 truck trips a day, and they're going to be going out Center Street. Now, is that going to be going both directions on Center Street or one direction on Center Street?
So just not all, so these questions you're asking are good questions,
Yeah.
but there's no project yet before the council or the planning board. What's before the council tonight is second reading on an ordinance that would amend the redevelopment plan for industrial use and building height. It's not granting approval to a specific project. Because it's in a redevelopment area, any approved project would have to first come before the council. That entity, if it's going to be Perone, they're designated as the redeveloper of the property, they have to enter into a redeveloper's agreement, right? And then they would have to go before the planning board for their site plan approval. If it's a different entity, and the cold storage facility is going to be the ultimate owner of the property, then that entity would be the redeveloper of the property and would have to enter a redeveloper's agreement with the council, with negotiation with the mayor, and then go before the planning board for site plan approval, at which point questions that you're asking would be addressed.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I appreciate those answers. So just on the topic then of cold storage, I just want to make a couple notes. First of all, if that is what's going to happen with this space, cold storage as far as a long-term local investment, poor idea. They go out of date in about 20 years and right now, it's much more affordable to build a new one than retrofit an older one. So whatever jobs or plans you have for this town, you're gonna have a giant building that's there for 20 years and then you're not gonna have use for it. On top of that, cold storage is not compatible with rail. So even if you have rail going to it, it's not gonna make sense. The biggest trends in cold storage right now are last mile fulfillment. So you'll have materials coming in and they're going to be going out on FedEx and UPS, that sort of thing. So I know all these guesses about the trucks are guesses right now based on what the use is, but it's going to be considerably more traffic than is being considered right now. Oh, that's it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Robin Coe Donaldson, 44 Hurleman Road, Sturtsville, New Jersey. I own a business and I own a building on South Main Street in the Flats. I'm here to talk about this 2022-30. I thought when this was originally brought to the council by Mr. Piazza, the ordinance, put this through, it was an amendment to the 2022-14. That's the right number, but this now reads that this is an actual zoning change. replacing that. Is that correct? This is
As to
not
the
an
first,
amendment.
it's amending the redevelopment plan to permit industrial uses and increase the building height from 50 feet to 65.
So you're changing the zoning to to industrial with this ordinance. This is not just an amendment for the size of the building and height of the building.
The industrial use was first changed or permitted in December of 2021. I can't remember when that ordinance was by. The one that's under review changed it. This ordinance increases the building, and in that plan, it was a 50-foot height max. This plan allows 55 feet to the top of the building, and then additional 10 feet for roof-mounted mechanicals.
Okay. The way I read this from what originally was presented, the other one referenced the older ordinance that is currently in a lawsuit. This one is actually saying, whereas the town will amend, it is not referencing that any longer. This is replacing it. Would you believe that that's correct? Because that's how this reads to me.
That is how it reads, yes. The original ordinance that was presented in the, not in the preambles, but in the actual action part of the body of the ordinance, now therefore being the gain part, referenced the original ordinance and ratified that ordinance in all respects. And there was an objection on the council to ratifying that ordinance while it was under review, judicial review, so that language was stricken. Which language?
The rezoning. So,
No, not the rezoning, the language ratifying the original 2021 ordinance.
okay, so this.
That's probably what you were,
Right.
that's
So
the
I'm still
ordinance.
getting here that this will change the zoning to industrial.
Whereas the town will amend the revised RRP to change District 5 from Riverside Residential to Riverside Industrial, to permit industrial uses, and allow the related amendments, and to permit a 65-foot building height. Those are the two things that this ordinance does.
Right. So then that 14 ordinance is gone. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Well, it's still on the books, and it's still under challenge. The language that was in this ordinance originally ratified that ordinance, validated it. That's no longer the case with this, but it does change the use to industrial, yes.
So if the lawsuit comes back and says that that one's gone, that was done incorrectly and it should go back to residential, does this stand instead?
I would say that this one stands instead, yes.
Okay, so no matter what, this is gonna change that zoning, regardless, however that lawsuit turns out. This is gonna change the zoning to industrial. So just so everybody's aware, this is a zoning change ordinance. This is not just for the
Well,
size of the.
right, but it was always that, that's why we referred to the planning board for the consistency. That's what the consistency review was undertaken.
Okay, so then real quick, I prefer that you vote no as a taxpayer. There is no truck route in place. There is no protections for residents in place for the traffic from the trucks. There is no protection for the school bus pickups. There is no consideration for the residents on Abbott, South Main Street and Center and McKean. There's no restriction on the number of trucks, the hours of operation, the idling of trucks. There's no plan for protecting our 200-year-old sewer and water system. There's no guarantee that the rail will be used. So if there's no underlying plan, it can turn into anything. And I agree with Mr. Piazza stating, we haven't seen anything.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we did get 3 minutes.
Okay. But we haven't even seen a plan. I don't know how you can vote yes.
Council Vice President, can I speak briefly to that? So just so we're aware, this is not an as-of-right application. So because it's in a redevelopment area, it's governed by the local housing and redevelopment law, and we have a redevelopment plan. But the developer has to come before the council in order to be designated as a redeveloper and to be approved for the use that it is intended to put the property to. So those questions regarding sewer capacity, infrastructure, what have you, those are all considerations the council will take under advisement, and also, of course, the planning board when doing site plan.
Thank you.
Benz, 39 South Main Street. I just want to follow up on what everyone said. I'm an unapologetic capitalist. I understand the process. But when I look at the applications and the applications of the people trying to build in that area as a new resident to the community, I'm unaware of why the rush would be. If there is a long-standing lawsuit on a particular ordinance that balances where or when that particular property will be developed, as somebody who buys property, I'm subject to what the town requirements are. So if there's a lawsuit outstanding, it seems to get around that in lack of transparency, I would prefer to see that resolved. And then the decision would be to this council in terms of its use. Again, I'm not for or against the warehouse. Tonight I was actually fascinated by the knowledge of someone with cold storage. Fascinating information. Hopefully you'll take that as kind of an assessment as part of your review of the process. Thanks.
Anyone else?
I can't go, School Lane, 5. I just had a question about which way is the rail going to go?
Pardon?
How is the rail going to go? Is it going to be leaving, is it going to come up the tracks from the south? Is it going to come down the tracks from the north? Is it going to hold up traffic at Union Square when it wants to turn around and go over the bridge to Pennsylvania? Did anybody think of that? Which way, you're talking about trucks doing this, and what about the rail?
So again, there's no project in place yet that addresses.
Well, when there is, it's just a question I'm throwing out there. That's all. It doesn't make any sense to be backing trains up into Union Square, where all our big problems seem to be.
And that'll be part of the conversation when the developer comes.
It's a big part of the conversation. You know how when the coal trains came through here, how much it held up traffic? They used to come, they used to try to coordinate their time to avoid it. But like anything else, it didn't. They came when they wanted to come, the railroad's the railroad. They do what they want to do. You know, that, I do that. Another thing that I lost my train of thought here is why couldn't, okay, if you're going to build this frigid freeze, whatever you want to call it, why couldn't they put a boat launch in down where they are? Put that in the supplements. Add that to the mix. You can't use a lot of you can't really use the boat launch without a permit up in the where it should be. Put it in there that we can build a launch down there. We put our boats in down there. It's free parking. That would be a plus. So think of that. Put that on their developer plans. They got all that to do with the railroad. They got all that to do with that property. They should be able to do that.
Well, and oftentimes when you have a project like this, the developer asks, what are some municipal improvements that we can make? What are some of the needs of the community that we can address? And that would certainly be a good time to bring up the boat launch on their property.
You know, like I say, we're throwing something good away with the way it is now. We got to sort of take, bring it back somewhere. Forget about the people that live here, that go back and forth here. That's my biggest complaint. Think about the people of Phillipsburg.
Hi, I'm Mary O'Sullivan, 518 Barrymore Street. I just have a question. It's a broad question, which is why can't we wait until all this information comes in? Seems to me that town attorney just answered a question before me that we have to wait for, to see about the sewers, etc. Why can't we wait and see about all of this? I don't understand why this has to happen tonight. I really don't. Maybe I'm naive. That, and also to the lady who wants it just to happen, stop dragging our feet. This is democracy. This is the citizens expressing their opinions and views, and if this is a microcosm of the town, don't think the town wants this. Thank you.
Philip McGovro, 599 Corliss Avenue, Phillipsburg, New Jersey. Lifelong resident of Phillipsburg. Council, Mayor, thank you for giving me the opportunity to make a few remarks tonight. The local economy, I had a discussion many years ago with Mr. Norton, who you may remember, former mayor and councilman and astute businessman in Phillipsburg for many years, and we had a discussion once about the local economy because we saw the harbinger of Ingersoll Rand, and they had applied for a tax abatement, and they were starting to lay off people. So we had a discussion. Mr. Norton told me that $1 earned in the local economy turns over 8 times. Now, you know, with Mr. Norton, you couldn't always verify everything he told you, but in this particular instance, I think that anecdotally he was somewhat near correct in his assessment. He wasn't prone to giving off-the-cuff comments like that without having some backing on them. I'm an environmentalist. I'm a Democrat. I'm an environmentalist. I believe in the environment. I believe we should do all to protect it, but also believe in the dignity of the individual to have a job and support their family. The economy and job creation and environmental concerns do not have to be mutually exclusive. They can be worked on together. They can be mutually beneficial if we find the time and the wherewithal to work on these things. The viability with creating jobs is always in the public interest. Employment opportunities that offer meaningful work with a living wage counteract the precariousness of unemployment and the many social problems that go along with unemployment and the opportunity to have a meaningful job. So I'm for this project because of the job creation. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Dan Boyd, 1526 Warren Street, Alton, New Jersey. No, really, this is a no-brainer. It's a win-win for the town. You just look at it all, undeveloped, it's a dump. People get down there and dump everything. You saw that, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, when the Boy Scouts went by and cleaned it all up. You develop it, you're not going to have the people dumping there. You know, I don't think the proponents against it, the people against it, I don't know, did they go down there and clean it up? Have they done that? No, they clean it so it's a dump. That's sad. It really is. You know, I remember Bobby Fulper going up here when he couldn't get the grass cleaned. It wasn't safe for the kids to cross the highway. He got his lawnmower from home and came and cut it. I don't remember that because I saw him going and did the same thing. You hear everything, the saying that the claims of how many jobs, X amount of jobs and X amount of money, you hear that they're lies, but yet nobody has offered any proof. Okay, I mean, that's smoke and mirrors, really. Both ways. I think I would tend to believe a developer, A, over someone else, and B, a developer with that kind of track record. You know, I would think might know what he's talking about. Maybe not, but I'm going to hedge towards that he does. They're concerned about the Center Street traffic, understandably. I've said it before, extend Howard Street down to the treatment plant. I don't think the treatment plant's going to complain about the trucks going by. And then you eliminate all the trucks from town. Make sure McWade, Ductile, they go up McKean to Howard and out of the town that way. That's the same way, come into the town that way. You can eliminate a lot more. It's a win-win for you guys. Really. The only other thing then, I have a question, is if you don't pass it, how long before you make the Panzer uniforms and the jack boots the official attire of Phillipsburg? Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Keith Swicker, 385 Congress Street, Phillipsburg, New Jersey, planning board member. Council asked the planning board to review this as a change of use. How can I say it? What's the legal term? You asked us to look at it if it was a redevelopment change. Consistent with the review. Council asked us also 20-some years ago to do the same thing. When there was a SMP truck depot down there, when there was plans to build a railroad museum down there, council asked the planning board many times to reevaluate this property. Each time we tried to do what was best. Council, planning board sent it back to council recommending this change. I've heard 6, 7, 8 people complain about it. I've sat at planning board meetings, same 7, 8 people. I've also been at Gino's Market. I've also been at the Bocce Court. I've also been downtown, where hundreds of people said, bring jobs back, get taxes back. So, planning board did what you asked. Planning board recommends this. Thank you.
I do Rob DeVere from Rural Development. Again, just real quick to address some of the comments that from the crowd to hopefully help make the decision. A couple of comments, particularly about the siting study that was referenced a few times. The property is an industrial area. Again, we have a gun range on one side, we have a waste transfer station on the other side, we have industrial across the street. In fact, we had an applicant here tonight who received a waiver from this body acknowledging that property is in an industrial area, needed a sidewalk waiver. As far as protected natural resources, again, I think it was referenced earlier, this site has previously gone through a site plan approval for a 400,000 square foot warehouse. That has received all necessary development approvals from the Department of Environmental Protection. That would be the body that governs protected natural resources, has a flood hazard area permit and all the permits necessary to construct. We talk about a cold storage operator and whether that's a good use or not. I have not heard the study about the 20-year timeline of cold storage facilities. We're coming up to about 20 years where U.S. Cold Storage, which was looking at the Ingersoll Rand property here in Phillipsburg, and then they're locating at the LVIP 7 site in Bethlehem. They're about 20 years in, operating a 400,000 square foot rail-connected cold storage facility. We didn't go out to this particular buyer. They came to us particularly because of the prospect of connecting to rail. The rail has become a critical component for us. It's a critical component for this buyer. We have now an LOI in place with the local rail provider and have a short track agreement that will be executed rather quickly here, which will allow them to connect the haul that comes from this, to and from this facility onto all the railroads that exist in the country. And as I understand it, the majority of these cold storage operators are all rail connected because that's the way that this product comes in. They firmly believe, as they've stated to us, that the addition of the rail connection is going to significantly reduce the amount of traffic that's going to be on the road. As Mr. Weiner said, somewhere between 50 to 20 or 25 trucks a day. Spread out over the course of 2 shifts, we're talking about a fairly negligible amount of truck traffic. As far as Center Street and access, we're fine with conditioning that all trucks that leave the site turn right onto South Main and go up to 78. That essentially becomes a town issue. Town could simply put a sign up that says, all trucks must turn right. And if they don't, you have your police down there, they can write tickets all day long, and that'll help with the town's finances. Again, we have an opportunity here to develop this site into something that is going to create 100 to 150 jobs, making $25 to $30 million an hour. And the people who, at the land use board meeting last week and the council meeting the week before, who suggested that these are lies or these jobs don't exist, just drive around. Look at any of the warehouses that exist all along the 22 corridor, the 78 corridor. It's all warehouse jobs advertising for 20, 25, 30 bucks an hour. We see it. We've developed these properties. We're in this space, and we ask the council to support the amendment. Thank you.
Good evening. Mike Perucci, Washington Lane, Bethlehem, Prone Construction. Having grown up in Lepac and Phillipsburg and spent most of my life here, I would never do anything that would hurt the town. When I purchased this property, it was zoned industrial. I requested this town to change it to residential. And for 15 years, I tried to build a residential complex there, to no avail. I've had 20 or 30 national developers, regional housing. They just never wanted to build a home project here. I mean, I tried for 15 years. I paid you guys probably $2.5 million worth of property tax. In the last 15 years, I've paid about $3 million through all the zoning, paid $700,000 for sewers I never used. I've tried for 15 years. So some of the original issues were we don't want the trucks going down South Main Street or Center Street. I totally agree with that. We're not going to build anything that takes a left on South Main Street or goes up Center Street. And I know you guys are working on the transportation thing. I will help you in regard to lobbying Trenton to make sure that that happens. We will not build anything that takes trucks up Center Street or left on South Main Street. We bought that house on McKean and South Main Street to expand that intersection so trucks could turn right. Not only trucks from our project, but trucks from the entire industrial zone, plus the Atlantic State trucks that go down your South Main Street currently. We can help that. Everyone said you couldn't get Howard Street extension. We got DOT to give you a $250,000 grant to design Howard Street. The trucks are going to be able to go through Howard Street. They're going to give you the money to build that extension. You wanted railroad. We worked with Mr. Cotty. Okay, this ordinance requires us to connect to the rail. And if you go to U.S. Cold Storage in Bethlehem, which is right next to some of our properties, they use great access for the rail. That's why the cold storage was really interested in coming here, because of the rail service. Phillipsburg is a really unique town. I love this town. I think near the bridges, I've offered to consider redeveloping those like I've done in Bethlehem and Easton and Burlington and other towns. I really think you could be a Jim Thorpe, you could be a Lambertville, you could be a New Hope down there. But Howard Street is an industrial area. We have an open gun range, which I think the county needs to really work with you fellas on, and I think you need to get your open space. Part of this redevelopment was we were providing $1 million to improve the Riverview Park. It's on the old dump. There's glass and other things coming up. That's why kids don't play football there or anything else, because it's unsafe. You know, our money, we're going to lift that, open up the entrance as part of this project. We're going to help you redevelop that park. So I've been down there 100 times. I've never seen more than 5 cars there. So thank you.
Anyone else? All right, with that, public comment is closed. Council discussion. Councilman Piazza.
Sure. I think a lot of people have covered a lot of the things I was going to say. We had a cold storage facility leave and not get developed here that ended up in Bethlehem about 20 years ago, but it's still flourishing. As rail access, I took a trip up there. I think I mentioned it last year, and maybe about 1.5 years ago, that I visited those sites to see, before it was even announced that it was going to be cold storage, just to see the type of work that Perun has put in and how they turned that area into a good working environment for Bethlehem that does coexist with a flourishing downtown and a main street. I think you heard my father mention, we've talked about this, how the all-encompassing word of warehouse paints a negative connotation to this project. I think the use has to be more focused on. The cold storage aspect of it is a part of bringing back our communities and our self-sustainability back into our hands. It's not luxury items, it's not TVs, it's not video games, it's not any type of electronics or sports equipment. It's food supply. We live in a food desert right now, so every trip to the supermarket means something. We have to travel a little further, and it costs a little more. So when you get there and those shelves are empty, or the food costs more, or you're getting less for your money, it's because we don't have the supply chain to provide that. And that does affect this community. So by being able to supply, projects like this will help resolve those type of issues. We need more projects like this to help with those food supply chain issues. We need to be able to, if there's a drought, to be able to go back to these types of cold storage places to pull the food out of storage that needs to be able to last through a drought or through a supply chain issue or through a blight, and be able to keep sustaining our public. And that does make it, in my opinion, environmentally positive. So I do think this not only is a positive with its jobs and infrastructure, with the rail, which will help improve the money that we can get federally, help improve the rail for our railroad excursions, and hopefully other people buy into the rail and start using that as well to further reduce truck traffic. It also helps in the grand scheme of things with being able to provide sustenance and just the ability to eat. So I know it's maybe a little simple, but I do see it that way. And I grew up down there. The house I grew up on, my father still lives there. You can see the property if you walk about 10 feet off the porch. So it's not like I'm voting for this without having anybody in that area. I grew up in that area, friends in that area. I walk down the street and I know people every 10 feet. And I don't hear a bad thing. There are some people who disagree with it, but when I go down there and I know the people that I grew up 20 years down there, knowing the families that are still there, they don't have a bad thing to say about this project. So I will be a yes vote for those reasons.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Marino?
Okay, here we go. 20 years ago, as president of town council, when Mr. Perucci was named the redeveloper, and cold storage was supposed to come in, and we didn't get it. Now we fast forward 20 years now. So we lost all those good jobs, all that money for 20 years. Michael, am I telling the truth? Because at my age, I might tend to forget a little detail. And that was a fight like you've never seen at a council meeting. But we had the ruling, we were right, and we thought we were doing what was good for Peterborough at that time. That's 20 years ago. I'm definitely a yes vote. Anybody in this room ever carried mail back there? When they were ripping it down? You carried mail back on the Howard Street?
Not that.
I know you didn't, because I did. You didn't. Okay? They were ripping them down. No mailman alive today would walk back there if those houses were still there. Take it from me. That's all I have to say. I'm a yes vote.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Kennedy?
Yes, as I said a couple of weeks ago, when you get elected to these positions, sometimes you have to make very tough decisions. If this were still a 400,000 or 500,000 square foot warehouse, I would definitely be a no. If there was no rail service, I would be a no. My main concern was the truck traffic through town. The rail service looks like it's going to happen, which would greatly cut down on the truck traffic, which was my main concern. My other concern, and people just brushed it off, is that if this cold storage deal were to walk away, there is a real possibility you're back to a 400, 500,000 square foot warehouse or something else less desirable. So this is by far the toughest decision that I had to make as a councilman so far. So after a lot of consideration, looking at all of the information possible to me, I'm going to be in favor of this ordinance.
Thank you, Councilman Kennedy. And for myself, we heard and took in a lot of information tonight. It's clear that up here, no councilman is taking this decision lightly, and we all want to see the progression of our town. So I'm prepared to take a vote on this, and I'd like to open it up for a roll call.
Councilman Piazza.
Yes.
Councilman Marino.
Yes.
Councilman Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Vice President Cook.
No.
And Council President Moyle recused, correct?
Correct. Motion passes.